and other drugs. Kids not only need to know the dangers and how to avoid them, they need to hear it often from you. And when it comes to pain medications, opioids, they need to know that they should never be taken without a prescription and never shared with friends or family. It's dangerous and illegal. So talk with your kids and guide them through the challenges of growing up safe and healthy. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
So talk, they hear you. You can do it if you try.
Two friends taking pictures of the rising full moon on a summer night.
Two teenage kids doing what teenage kids do.
When a stranger with a gun and a death wish changed everything.
It was violent, it was senseless, and I will never understand it, I will never accept it.
I'm Amy Donaldson, and unfortunately, we're all too familiar with stories about how violence shatters lives. But what we rarely see is how they are rebuilt. In a new podcast, The Letter, we relive tragedy, but only so we can hear the rest of the story. The struggle to reclaim lives, the realities of grief, and the possibilities of forgiveness.
I believe in miracles. Sometimes I thought, there are no miracles. Yeah, there are, and this is a big one.
Follow The Letter at theletterpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair. Save up to 20 cents with DinoPay. And here's Ricky Meese.
All is well on your Salt Lake County freeways. No accidents, no delays. We have had a little bit of busy traffic at the intersection of 7th West and 7200 South. No accidents reported there. Most of the backup is on the westbound side of 7200 West. But again, looking good on the freeways and main secondaries. Jewelry for all of life's greatest celebrations. J. Brooks Jewelers, family-owned jewelers since 1997. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, sunny above the haze today and tomorrow. We won't see much change until Thursday when snow showers will improve our air quality, and then more snow could move in Saturday and Sunday. And right now, 43 degrees and sunny. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, welcome to a new year on Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. I am Boyd Matheson. It's great to be with you as always. And of course, 2024 is going to be a very busy, very contested year on everything from national politics right down to the local level. And we're going to begin the year by going big in what's happening in Iowa, 13 days away from the Iowa caucus. And candidates are spending these final 2 weeks on the campaign trail. So we want to get past the headlines of what they're saying. What does it actually mean? Why is Iowa in the middle of all of this? And what comes next? Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, our job is to get you to think again about what you think you know or what you think you read in terms of the headlines in the news. And we're going to do that on a wide range of issues throughout the day today. Everything from the resignation of the Harvard University president today to what Congress has on the table. We're going to talk about mental health and why it became the dominant topic on the Sunday political shows over the weekend. And so we're going to get into all of that. We're going to spend the next 30 minutes, however, breaking down what is going on the campaign trail leading up to Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina, particularly on the Republican side. President Biden seems to have a pretty simple path to become the Democratic nominee once again. But there's a lot up in the air when it comes to the Republicans. There's been a host of things, and coming up at 1:20, we're going to do a little deeper dive into those who are trying to keep the former president off the ballot in different ways, and whether that's a good idea or a bad idea, regardless of where you fall politically. So we'll dive into that. So stick with us for the next 30 minutes as we break all of this down. And let's start with the candidates on the Republican side. trying to be the nominee for president. Former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie has had an increasing call for him to bow out of the race, in that he hasn't really gotten enough traction to really make the case to keep moving along. But in typical Chris Christie fashion, he released a new ad in New Hampshire where he's really staked his campaign, where he spent the most amount of time and resources. Take a listen to this new ad as he responds to the call that he should drop out of the race.
Some people say I should drop out of this race. Really? I'm the only one saying Donald Trump is a liar. He pits Americans against each other. His Christmas message to anyone who disagrees with him? Rotten hell. He caused a riot on Capitol Hill. He'll burn America to the ground to help himself. Every Republican leader says that in private. I'm the only one saying it in public. What kind of president do we want? A liar or someone who's got the guts to tell the truth? New Hampshire, it's up to you.
Classic Chris Christie, straightforward, no music, no fanfare, just the words. Called out the former president, talked about those on the Republican side, saying this is what they're saying in private, but no one wants to say it in public for fear of upsetting the base. So Chris Christie says, no, I'm not dropping out. In his language, are you kidding me? He says he has an important role to play and that he'll continue to do that. And New Hampshire really is going to be the place to watch for Chris Christie. He continues to lag far behind in the polls there, but he really needs to have something happen in New Hampshire for him to keep moving on as things progress. Someone in a similar boat, for very different reasons, Vivek Ramaswamy, is suddenly campaigning very hard in Iowa, though he's barely registering in the polls there in Iowa. Has pulled all of his advertising, television advertising, out of Iowa. But recently, actually early today, he released a new message talking about truth.
If you want a candidate who's going to actually get in there, shut down the deep state, and speak truth to power, then vote for the candidate who's going to speak the truth to you. Ask yourself why I'm the only candidate who can tell you certain things, who can make certain commitments. That'll shut down the FBI, not just incrementally reform it. See, I'm not bought and paid for. I'd rather, frankly, speak the truth and lose an election than to win by playing some political snakes and ladders. But I'm making a bet that that's the winning strategy. Here in Iowa, going at full throttle, we're just getting warmed up.
So that's Vivek Ramaswamy. And again, he's only registering about 3% in the polls, both in Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, as well as nationally. So he hasn't gotten a lot of traction there. He did try to make a few waves just before the holiday, talking about joining President Trump and not being on the ballot in Colorado and Maine, which is a pretty easy thing for Vivek Ramaswamy to do. It's sort of like giving the sleeves off of your vest. He's not registering. He's inside the margin of error. And so that's not a real big, bold play, but got him a few headlines and a few extra interviews on cable news. But again, nothing really happening there, nothing really moving forward. Will be interesting to see if he plays the role of defending former President Trump. He's done that in a number of debates. And if he stays in the campaign just to do that, as someone who supports the former president, could be the role that Vivek Ramaswamy will continue to play. Nikki Haley, on the other hand, has been the only one who's really been able to mount any kind of momentum or change in the dynamics of the race, really since the beginning, almost a year ago. She appeared with Neil Cavuto over the weekend, and she was asked about foreign policy specifically, because she's been running heavily on that, and how her foreign policy in Ukraine would be an improvement over the current President Joe Biden. Here's how she explained it.
You know what Joe Biden hasn't done is he hasn't told people why they should care about Ukraine. He hasn't told them that this is a way to prevent war from us having to send men and women overseas. My husband's deployed now. The last thing I want is for him to fight a war. And Joe Biden hasn't done a good job explaining it. There's a reason the Ukrainians want the U.S. and the West to support Israel, because they know if Iran wins, Russia wins.
So some very interesting perspective there from Nikki Haley. And again, remember, her husband is deployed currently. So she does have some skin in the game, has family in the game. And so that matters to her. I thought she did a good job. And I think she's actually right when it comes to what the Biden administration has not done. Again, regardless of how you feel about the issue, from a communication strategy standpoint, the White House has not done a good job in maintaining or sustaining anything around Ukraine as to the why it matters, why American people should care, why Congress should be allocating funds to help them not just defend themselves, but to win the war. And so that's going to be an interesting juxtaposition in terms of where she goes. And then Ron DeSantis, of course, was asked why he is a better choice for president than Donald Trump. And here was his response.
I'm more likely to get elected than Donald Trump. He has a lot of people built in against him, and I think the whole election will be about a referendum on Trump and all these other issues rather than holding Biden accountable. I'll be able to hold Biden accountable, make it a referendum on that, and then talk about our positive vision. I'm also more likely to get things done. I've shown it in Florida. Everything I promised, I delivered on. We don't have time for distractions. We need a president that can be focused on the American people's issues, not on the president's personal issues, but on their family and the future of this country.
So that was Governor Ron DeSantis, who has struggled really coming out of the gate, has had a hard time getting any kind of footing or any kind of positive momentum. Interesting in his answers there, I always listen not just for what they're saying, but what they're not saying or how they're saying it. There were a lot of sweeping generalities in that response from Governor DeSantis, that he would be more likely to be elected, that he would do good things, that, not a lot of specifics. A lot of what he was against President Biden, against former President Trump, not a lot of vision. He mentioned the word vision, but never really said anything other than he would have one and move on to that. And so those are things that you always listen to in terms of, are they getting to specifics? Remembering that when we talk about things in generalities, we very rarely succeed, but when we talk about them in the specifics, we very rarely fail. That's important for presidential candidates, also important for your New Year's resolutions if you're still working on those today. Get to the specifics and the details. That's where it actually happens. Now, one of the interesting things that has been happening down the final stretch, this is also often indicative of where people are, and that is who is spending money in Iowa. And as I mentioned before, Vivek Ramaswamy has pulled out most of his TV ad buys out of the state of Iowa. And if you look at over the course of the next 2 weeks, Ron DeSantis will spend about $1 million in advertising there. And very interesting, the Nikki Haley associated groups will spend over $4 million in advertising leading up to those Iowa caucuses just 2 weeks out. To me, that indicates that they may have some polling or some indication that they might be able to catch a little bit of lightning in a bottle in Iowa and try to parlay that into New Hampshire and into South Carolina. So there's a long, long way to go in this, but it will kick off in Iowa on the 15th. And then, of course, we go to New Hampshire, South Carolina, on to Nevada from there, on towards Super Tuesday, where Utah will have a voice as well. So of those nominees on the Republican side, they're all trying to get on the ballot as the nominee. When we come back, we're going to stay with this conversation, and we're going to talk about the Democratic strategy to get the former president off of the ballot and how they might do that, but it might be a Pyrrhic victory in the end. Stick around. More Inside Sources coming up next.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. Born Michael King Jr. on January 15th, almost 100 years ago.
Rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice.
Minister, activist, and civil rights leader. His message as important today as it was then.
Now is the time to make justice a reality for all of God's children.
We honor the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.
at KSL News Radio.
When you hire your local CertaPro painters, you get the power of doing it right. Detailed project proposals, excellent customer service, and trusted professionals who get the job done on time and on budget. The power of experience. We're kings of the scaffolding and pros with the stucco. We've been there, done that. Get your project started at CertaPro.com and get the power of pro.
Each CertaPro painter's business is independently owned and operated.
Give the star in your life the brightest gift in the world. Name a star after them. This is Rocky Moselle with International Star Registry. For $59 and a call to 800-282-3333 or visit starregistry.com, you can name a star for birthdays, weddings, or even memorials. Over 45 years, we have named millions of stars for celebrities and individuals from around the world. The star you name will be recorded in book form in the U.S. Copyright Office. Visit starregistry.com or call 800-282-3333.
You can live out your MasterChef dreams when you find a professional on Angie to tackle your dream kitchen remodel. Connect with skilled professionals to get all your home projects done well. Inside to outside, repairs to renovations. Get started on the Angie app or visit Angie.com today. You can do this when you Angie that.
Believe it or not, most small businesses don't have a 401k. If you don't have a 401k, you are missing out on the greatest wealth creation tool ever created. I'm Jeff Jr. with Trajan Wealth, and many 401ks are overpriced for the employer, have expensive and underperforming investment options, and have tedious administrative provisions. Not at Trajan Wealth. We can set up a 401k for a company for only $9 per employee, a $29 per plan fee, plus a small advisory fee. Not thousands or even the tens of thousands you've been quoted. And do it all in less time than it takes to sit in traffic. 401ks will help you attract and retain top talent, and we can do it all for a couple $100. If you're an employee and don't have a 401k, tell your boss. Call Trajan Wealth today. Call 801-899-7600. That's 801-899-7600.
Services offered through a third-party partner.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, criminals are very interested in where you're going on vacation, especially if you post about it on social media. Second, a new state law took effect with the new year that's supposed to make dating apps safer. And third, the president of Harvard University has resigned after accusations of plagiarism in her academic work came to light. Right now, 43 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
We're really pleased to have joining us on the program today Dr. Keith Naughton, co-founder of Silent Majority Strategies, a public and regulatory affairs consulting firm. He's a former Pennsylvania political campaign consultant, great thinker, great writer, had a fantastic piece. We've been talking a lot, obviously, about what's been going on with some of these court challenges around the 14th Amendment and former President Donald Trump. Keith, welcome to the program, and you really made an important point, I think, that the Democrats better be careful. These victories in Colorado and Maine may turn out to be Pyrrhic victories. Explain that for us.
Well, great to be here. Thanks so much for the invite. I think the problem that they have is, Trump's been losing in the courts, and he's been losing ground. But he's still been doing all right in the polls. If he notches up a victory on appeal and gets a little bit momentum on that side, I think that's really going to hurt the Democrats going forward. And it hurts this argument that they've been making that they're the true defenders of democracy and everything they're doing is defending the republic, and Donald Trump's doing all these terrible things, and he has been doing some bad things. But it really undermines that in the public's mind. So they really need to be careful about celebrating these victories.
Yeah.
Not just in Colorado, but that Maine decision was a really bad decision.
Yeah, and I want to get into both of those, and we're always equal opportunity offenders and equal opportunity commenders on this program when it's warranted. And so whether people love the former president, hate the former president, whatever it may be, that's not the issue we're talking about. What we're talking about is the process here. And so unpack that for us just a little bit in terms of these decisions in Colorado and Maine and why these things need to be very, very clear cut, as you pointed out in your piece in The Hill.
Well, I think other people made this point, too. Trump should be on the ballot everywhere or nowhere. He either broke the Constitution and either he should be disqualified as a federal candidate or not. And the sort of cherry picking, it smells to me like an attempt to, at worst, get the nominee for the other party off the ballot to suppress voting in that state and help pick up some down ballot seats. At worst, it looks like you're stealing the election through other means. In the Colorado case, I think it's very problematic that it was a 4-3 decision at the court. That's the first issue. There needs to be some consensus here about whether someone is or isn't qualified. It shouldn't be a close decision in the first place. And in the second place, we've got a trial going on that'll go on in March. And while Trump isn't charged specifically with insurrection in that trial, he's charged with crimes related to what happened on January 6th in the counting electoral ballots. That trial should really happen and go forward. And if he's guilty, now you've got much better grounds to say we had a full-blown trial, we had witnesses, we had the entire case laid out, and a decision was made by the jury. Sort of advance decision ahead of that trial, I think, is really inappropriate.
Yeah, kind of that preemptive look to it all, I think, is what is going to be problematic for sure. And you mentioned that 4-3 decision, which I thought was interesting, too, because all 7 of those judges sitting on the bench there in Colorado were appointed by governors who were Democrats. And so even amongst that, if you wanted to play the pure politics of it from the bench, didn't play out or didn't pass muster there. You also pointed out in your piece something that I think is also really important, and that is this whole component of making sure this is done at a big level, that this shouldn't be done by a patchwork of decisions that can all be made, like it was in Maine, by a single person, as opposed to a judge, a jury, or whatever it may be.
Right, and I think there's sort of 2 features to that. I mean, the first one, if we deal with the Maine issue, to have one person, the Secretary of State, make what is really just an administrative ruling on a major party candidate, on the leading candidate. I mean, this isn't kicking Asa Hutchins off the ballot. You know, no one's going to miss that guy. But you're talking about a leading candidate. That's a serious decision. And for her to say, oh, well, I really thought about it, and I don't know, I watched some YouTube videos, and it sounds real convincing. Come on. You can't make a decision like that as an individual. It really opens a can of worms. What's she going to do about other people on the ballot in Maine if that stands?
Yeah.
And, you know, the second half of it is, if I were plotting things on the Democratic side, I would have said right up front, we're going to go to 2 states. We're going to go to a state like Colorado or Rhode Island, a Democratic state, where we think we're going to win. And we're going to go to a state like Alabama, where we know we're going to lose. And that's our way to get to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court should decide, did Trump violate the 14th Amendment? Is he disqualified? That's really what they should have done. This patchwork thing, it's a bunch of nonsense, and I think part of it is also a fundraising scam by some folks.
Yeah, we call that out regularly on this email, are making a lot of hay off of this particular issue on both sides of the political spectrum, for sure. You also pointed out a really interesting component to me. We often talk about federalism on this show, and there's a lot of good reasons to talk about that. And you pointed out in your piece at thehill.com that suddenly there are some on the left that have suddenly found religion in some federalism to make the case for this patchwork approach. Tell us why that either does or doesn't hold water.
Well, it's hard to say you're defending democracy when you treat it like a buffet and you go down the list and say, well, I like this, but I don't like that. But you know what? I hate states' rights. Oh, but now it's going to work for me.
Yeah.
So I think I like it a lot more. I mean, it really is a federal issue. And I think this is a sort of larger danger that the Democrats have is you've got all this sanctimony about what you're doing. Well, you better be pure of heart and deed when you do it. And that certainly isn't the case. And that's a long-term credibility problem for them.
Yeah, and I think that takes even one step further. And I love that you called this out, because we've been discussing a lot just this absence of trust and trust in the institutions of government. We always say we've stress tested the country in pandemics and world wars and economic collapse, but we haven't stress tested it in the absence of trust either in institutions or in each other. And you point out the fact that the integrity of the Justice Department is also coming into play in all of this.
Well, it is. They're supposed to be even-handed. And you can make the argument that these prosecutions of Trump are legitimate, and we'll find that out when it gets to court. You know, there was a recent event, intervening that piece where the Justice Department decided, you know what, we put Sam Bankman-Fried in jail and that's enough. Very conveniently, they're not prosecuting any of the political favors on him, which could open up a huge can of worms for his mother was put together a big super PAC that supports Democratic causes. They're Democrats who received his contributions. The president received a lot. It looks very convenient that they're avoiding that. So that really hurts your trust in the government. You really need to have an objective judiciary and objective judicial system.
Yeah, and then finally, just in our last minute here, You say this needs to be not just a decision, but a resounding, even a unanimous decision to really kind of put this thing to bed so that we can have that trust, that confidence, so that everything can actually move forward, regardless of who the candidate is.
Right. Now, I referenced a decision back in the 50s, this Brown versus Board of Education. If anyone's interested in reading a great history book, you can read David Halberstam's book, The 50s, and he talks about this decision that overturned the wrongly decided decision that made separate but equal the law. And one thing that Halberstam pointed out is that the brilliance of the Chief Justice, Earl Warren, was in knowing that the court had to make a unanimous decision and issue one opinion and speak with one voice, because it's not enough to make a decision on a matter of this importance. It has to be very clear. There has to be unanimity in it. And I think the problem with Colorado wasn't just the decision, it's that it was 4-3. There was a lot of dissent, especially from Democratic-appointed judges.
Great insight, great piece at thehill.com. Dr. Keith Naughton is founder of Silent Majority Strategies, a public and regulatory affairs consulting firm. Again, great thinking, great writing. This is where the conversation needs to get to. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Well, we spent the last half hour talking about those who are trying to get on the ballot, those who are trying to get some people off the ballot. When we come back, we're actually going to get into a little bit of the things that Democrats and Republicans are afraid of. The answer might surprise you. Stick around. We'll be right back.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour. Managers of the Great Salt Lake still hoping this slow start to winter turns around. Currently, the amount of water in the statewide snowpack is 33% below normal. Not good news for the lake, which is still 5.5 feet shy of its optimum level. Great Salt Lake Deputy Commissioner Tim Davis is not giving up hope.
Hopefully, this winter, Mother Nature gives us a leg up. But if not, regardless, and even if she does, we still need to get more water to the lake to get it back to a healthy level.
Along with everyday conservation, Davis says state lawmakers and his office are working through other options to get more water into the lake. More than 50 people had to be checked out at the hospital after a carbon monoxide poisoning incident in the little town of Monroe in Sevier County. This happened at a meeting house of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Local sheriff's office also had to call in help to transport every affected person to the hospital. The church is now investigating an issue with the building's heating system, says they will help with medical expenses. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. Investigators at Tokyo Haneda Airport still trying to figure out how a Japan Airlines A350 ran into a Coast Guard plane while it was landing. Both planes burst into flames, and ABC's Alex Stone has the latest.
An executive at Japan Airlines updating reporters saying the airline does not yet understand why the crash happened and whether the Airbus A350 had clearance to land when it hit the Japanese Coast Guard plane on the runway, both bursting into flames. Air traffic control audio indicates that Japan Airlines pilots did have clearance to land.
All 379 people aboard the airliner escaped, but 5 people on the Coast Guard plane were killed. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average down now on the day, 66 points. The NASDAQ has been down all day, and right now at 302 points. That's about 2% below where it started. And our KSL weather is not going to change until Thursday. That's next. KSL News Time, 1:31.
Here's a way to get breaking news updates anywhere you go.
At the store or in a work meeting, you can get breaking news on your phone.
You can quickly read it, swipe, or click for more. It's super discreet, super fast.
That's the app for KSL News Radio.
It's a mystery where Old Spice finds its amazing scents like Himalayan sea salt, but I'm thrilled they have because no other body wash exfoliates and moisturizes 24/7 like Old Spice Gentleman's Himalayan Sea Salt Body Wash. Now, if only there was a mountain range separating the Indian subcontinent from the Tibetan plateau where I could hide my Old Spice and keep my family from stealing it, my impossibly smooth skin will finally be safe.
At Grainger, we're for the ones who specialize in saving the day,
and for the ones who've mastered the art of keeping business moving. We offer industrial-grade supplies for every industry, with same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders, all backed by real people ready to help. So you can get the right answers and products right when you need them. Call quickgrainger.com or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack. Sure, you can post your job to some job board, but then all you can do is hope the right person comes along, which is why you should try ZipRecruiter for free at ziprecruiter.com/free. ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. Its powerful technology identifies people with the right experience and actively invites them to apply to your job. You get qualified candidates fast. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you what you're looking for. The needle in the haystack.
4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site within the first day. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free. Just go to this exclusive web address, ziprecruiter.com/free. That's ziprecruiter.com/free. ZipRecruiter.com/free.
Any Hour Services can help you make sure your furnace keeps you warm this winter. Whether you need a tune-up, a repair, or a second opinion about replacing it, call Any Hour Services or visit anyhourservices.com.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair. Save up to 20 cents with DinoPay. Here's Ricky Meese.
You're good to go on the Valley freeways and our main secondaries. No accidents and no delays. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
And our KSL weather, sunny above the haze today and tomorrow. We won't see much change in our weather until Thursday, when snow showers should improve our air quality. More snow could move in Saturday and Sunday. And right now, we're looking at 41 degrees with sunny skies above the haze. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, you've heard me ask the question many times on this program. What are you afraid of? We often ask those on the left and those on the right. What are you afraid of? We also ask voters, what are you afraid of? We'll get to that a little bit later on in the show today. But this whole idea of fear-driven politics, fear-based decision-making is part of what is the problem, not just in presidential election cycles and the halls of Congress. Happens at the state and local level. It happens in our businesses. Happens right in our own communities. And so today we're going to get to the question, what are the elites and the leaders so afraid of? Again, not a left or right issue. And we want to see how this fear-based decision-making is driving politics and where it's actually driving us to. Really thrilled to have joining us on the program Michael Schaffer, senior editor and columnist at Politico magazine. And Michael, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Brilliant piece. I've been looking forward to this since I read your piece and getting to this whole idea of there are things that the liberal elites are afraid of. There are things that the conservative elites are afraid of. And a lot of it's leading to really bad decision-making all across the board. Give us the basis for your premise in all of this fear.
Sure. And I'm talking about like people who run organizations and institutions in kind of conservative culture and blue state culture. And my thesis is that the organizations and institutions of the left are petrified in a lot of cases of their staff, particularly of their young, post-collegiate, more strident staff. And similarly, the organizations and institutions of the right are often petrified, but not of their staff, but of their audience, of their base. And this extends to the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party, they're afraid of the people who work campaigns, and the Republican Party is afraid of getting the wrong side of their base. And in both cases, it's the common denominator is these are elites who are scared of people who are a little bit less elite. You know, on the blue side, they're scared of their young employees who often have like pretty fancy, academic resumes too, but are not yet in positions of power. They will be someday. And on the right, they're afraid of the comparative nobodies who are actually listening to the show or reading the news.
Yeah, and I want to unpack both sides of that equation because it is interesting to me that the elites who have been increasingly out of touch on, again, left and right equal, they're just out of touch, and it's leading to a whole host of different things in society. And again, I think some of the distrust we have in institutions, whether it's businesses, government, religious institutions, and so on, higher education. We're seeing a whole host of things happen there. Unpack it for us just a little bit more in terms of both the left and right, in terms of that disconnect between the elites and, as you said, either those that are kind of on their way up and mobile or those the audience piece on the right.
So one of the examples I used was to contrast probably like the most famous media organizations which have some sort of ideological charge to them. And on the right, it's Fox. And during the lawsuit, they had libeled the Smartmatic and Dominion, the ballot machine maker, and had people saying, that this was that they stole the election and so on. During that lawsuit, which Fox wound up settling, a lot of internal communications came out and became public. And basically the gist of these internal communications was that all the executives knew that the stolen election stuff was dangerous nonsense, but they didn't have the guts to say it because it was going to upset their audience. And what if the audience started watching someone else instead? A very scary business decision. By contrast, there was big news, at least for us reporters, like within the media ecosystem last month, was this James Bennett, who had been the editorial page editor of the New York Times, was fired in 2020 following an internal controversy when his section published an op-ed by Tom Cotton, a conservative Republican, that was called Call in the Troops, suggesting they send in the military to quell disturbances following in protests following George Floyd's killing. And what he does, he paints a picture of a paper that is full of, where the higher-ups are some of the great journalists of our time, and they are petrified of running things that would upset the way he describes it, very strident young people, mostly to the left, who have a very different idea of what journalism should do and how open it should be to heterodox ideals.
And so as you look at the kind of the therefore what component to all of this, what does this look like moving forward? And what is it that we, the people, what are we afraid of? And what should we be looking at instead?
Well, look, I think, you talk to people on both sides, and they each think that their side is more screwed over by this setup. But look, a lot of progressive organizations were really sort of tied in knots over, internal issues of staff diversity and stuff, which are not illegitimate issues, but they are things where it used to be that higher-ups would just run right over the young people who were making a fuss about things because they were the bosses. And this did, I think did hamper some of their effectiveness. There's a wonderful new book by John Judas and Roy Teixeira called Where Have All the Democrats Gone?, which basically makes an argument that this very alien culture of recent college graduates is leading the Democrats to lose a lot of support and to do things that are alienating to blue-collar people of all races and all views on things like taxes. So that's a place where the kind of internal culture divide is really keeping them from doing some stuff that they think they would like to achieve. And on the other side, this notion that you have got this base that is very hot to, very fired up, and you don't dare ever compromise or do anything that will enable someone to accuse you of being a sellout. That is an inherently dangerous situation, too, because anyone who's ever been the boss of anything knows that you got to make some compromises sometimes. And so if everyone is afraid of doing sort of responsible leadership things, that leads to a very bad situation. So you have basically this, internal dynamics, very different internal dynamics on both sides that lead to more brittleness and more stridency, less ability to compromise, make deals, get along, and live to fight another day.
Yeah, fascinating stuff, and I do think it's really the difference between elites in position of power versus actual leaders leading. It's easy to shout the angry talking points at those that you disagree with, but when you've got to talk to your employees and speak the truth, or you got to talk to your base, your audience, and say something that they're not going to like, that's the test of leadership. And you don't get to do that just because you're elite.
Right. And I think there's also a moment where, in any organization, even, running a radio show, that you have to say to folks inside the tent, folks, let's keep an eye on what is True North. What are we here for? There's this other issue that you were getting upset about, and you may be right about that. It may be legitimate, but it's kind of not our True North right now. And I think that ability to do that, I think, in our current media ecosystem becomes harder and harder because people can throw stuff at you that is both a distraction but also not necessarily false.
Yeah, and it is, and we obviously see that on both the left and the right. You have someone who decides that they do go for the art of compromise, or what Joe Lieberman often refers to as the integrity of compromise, and then they find themselves with a primary challenger in the next election, which again goes back to the fear-based everything that we're contending with. But I do think I think you've really hit a nerve in terms of how do we actually get to that kind of leadership and create space for that kind of compromise or that kind of conversation that leads to the integrity of compromise. As we march it all forward, give us one last thing to just be thinking about internally ourselves as we watch, whether they're elites in positions of power or whether they're real leaders who are leading. What is it that we should be watching for?
I think so much of politics has become tied up in symbolism. I'm going to make a stand on this symbolic issue that is moral and it's very hard to compromise on. I think a lot of reporters. I'm lucky as a reporter that I began my career covering like a city council, and these guys in the city council were. They were often kind of hacks, and like they weren't necessarily like great public servants, but they understood that the business was kind of a transactional one. And like, I'll build an amphitheater in your district if you target a tax break to this company, that kind of stuff. This is nothing anyone's ever going to get like a Nobel Prize for, but it enables the people's work to get done. And ultimately, government is here to sort of figure out what the resources are and divvy them up, how much of them we're going to take, how much we're going to share, what the rules are. These are things that are kind of inherently able to compromise, unlike some of the so-called values issues, which it's pretty hard to, if you are strongly pro-life or strongly pro-choice, it's pretty hard to compromise there. But there's so much of what government is supposed to do that it's actually very, very easy to compromise on.
Yeah, and I think that's the important thing is to get to those spaces. And when government does the things that it's supposed to do, getting to that compromise is really not all that complicated at all. Michael Schaffer, senior editor and columnist at Politico Magazine. You need to check out this piece. It is a great read. It is a great think piece that'll get you thinking about what the elites on both the left and the right are afraid of, and what we all should be thinking about just a little bit different. Michael, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Michael Schaffer from Politico Magazine. It's a great piece, and it's something we're going to continue to talk about. And it's an interesting thing to me because the elites on both sides are becoming more and more disconnected from the rest of the country. We've been seeing that play out on college campuses, and we're going to dig into that a little more when we come back. Stick around. More Inside Sources coming up next.
We're just days away.
State lawmakers are already hard at work on a number of bills,
making decisions that affect you.
Utah's 2024 legislative session starts in January. Get updates on every bill with Tim and Amanda mornings and Jeff Kaplan afternoons. Eye on the Hill 2024
on KSL News Radio.
Have you heard of IRS Tax Code Section 1.408A-4? It sounds complicated, but it's a simple tax law thousands of Utah families are using to lock in lower tax bills when they retire. If you've saved at least $200,000 for retirement, and some of this money is in an IRA or 401k, it could save you tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars in future tax bills. You can find out how much you could save by requesting a free and confidential retirement tax savings analysis. It's from Boss Retirement Solutions, a 5-time winner of Utah's Best of State Award. For your free retirement tax analysis, call 801-896-9622. 801-896-9622. That's 801-896-9622.
Advisory services offered through Boss Retirement Advisors, an SEC-registered investment advisory firm. Insurance products and services offered through Boss Retirement Solutions.
If you know me, Hans Olsen, you know my wife's the most important thing in my life. What she wants, I deliver. And it looks like we're getting new cabinets. I took her to the Euromax cabinet showroom in Pleasant Grove, and she hasn't looked at me the way she looked at those cabinets in 15 years. Doors that close quietly with the press of a button, LED lighting inlaid, waterproof box, shelves, and doors that won't warp from moisture. Every color and design imaginable for those doors. Simply put, the most magnificent cabinets your eyes will ever behold. Mike and Max combined a vision of over 35 years of experience to bring us Euromax. Max with his Ukraine roots, and Mike with 25 years of installation. It delivers the greatest in cabinet design, building, and installation. Truly, my amazing wife was in awe. We both were. And if I have to buy her love, I will. Go see all the possibilities at EuromaxFurniture.com. That's EuromaxFurniture.com. Whether you're rebuilding a kitchen or starting a new build, it's EuromaxFurniture.com for your cabinets. Euromax, built for you.
Getting help with plumbing repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack. Sure, you can post your job to some job board, but then all you can do is hope the right person comes along, which is why you should try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. Its powerful technology identifies people with the right experience and actively invites them to apply to your job. You get qualified candidates fast. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you what you're looking for. The needle in the haystack.
4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site within the first day. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free. Just go to this exclusive web address, ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free. ZipRecruiter.com/free.
Visit the contest page on KSLNewsRadio.com. This week, win $250 cash. That's right. We're giving you a chance at New Year's cash just for subscribing to our text database. Or win lower bowl tickets to an upcoming jazz game. Catch select jazz games right here on KSL News Radio. Plus, win tickets to the Piano Guys, coming September to the Sandy Amphitheater. What are you waiting for? Text the word contest to 57500 or go to KSLNewsRadio.com/contests.
Tim and Amanda.
You know, we've been doing this, 30 years, Tim? We know that the news can be heavy. We know that it can be difficult sometimes to listen to or understand. But that doesn't mean that we're supposed to live in that down place every day. We learn the news, we're educated so we can take care of our families. But then, you know what? We go out and have a good day.
Well, I think both of us come from the standpoint, and we have families. We have kids that are coming up different ages. Yours are younger than mine. Mine are grown adults. But we always try and look for the bright side, I think, because we all want to have that in our lives.
And it's there. There is a bright side.
There is a bright side out there, and so we look for those opportunities each day to hopefully send that message to you, even if it's not directly, in words, that at least in sentiment, things are going to be okay.
Do you know what I like to tell people? The news is the exception, not the rule. So if there's violence in the news, that's the exception. The rule is most of us are safe and happy and doing okay.
Amen.
Utah's Morning News between 5 and 9 on KSL News Radio.
Join KSL in the movie show this Friday from 11 to 1 at the Salt Lake NPS Store, 1600 Empire Road in Salt Lake City, npsstore.com.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, our dry winter so far is increasing risks for the Great Salt Lake. Second, carbon monoxide at a church in Sevier County affected dozens of people. Third, a Japan Airlines plane with almost 400 people aboard did have clearance to land in Tokyo. Before it hit a Coast Guard plane on the runway, everybody on the airliner survived, but 5 people on the other plane were killed. 41 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Well, if you missed the last segment of the program, we were talking about how the elites from the left and the elites from the right fear parts of American society in an amazing way. And we've actually seen in the toppling of another public leader shows that there just might be something to that. Just within the last couple of hours, a developing story here on KSL News Radio, Harvard President Claudine Gay has announced she is resigning from her post. It comes after Harvard alumni, donors, and government officials called for her to step down over her congressional testimony that waffled on whether students can call for the genocide of Jews on campus, what actually constitutes hate speech, what is threatening, and so on. She also faced scrutiny from accusations for plagiarism, being protected by Harvard's board over the course of that for quite some time. The interesting thing to me is, what does her ouster and her resignation mean for public trust in our country's institutions? That's what we're trying to get back to. But to me, the answer to all of this is really found in this disconnect between the elites of the country from the left and the right and what they actually fear. Again, if you missed our conversation, we had Michael Schaffer from Politico Magazine who had a great piece on that. And I just think there's something to it. There is such a disconnect. There used to be this natural divide in the country in terms of opinion and kind of the pulse of the country between those who were college educated and those who were not, kind of the rest. Now it's become even more elite in that it's those with post-secondary degrees and everybody else seems to be the differentiator. And the difference in the perception and worldview, to me, is really stunning. And we're going to see a lot of that, I think, coming out, not just in the context of what we've seen at some of these elite universities, but I think we're going to see that play out in the presidential election. I think we're going to see it out in a host of different places in the coming months. And we're going to track all of that here on Inside Sources. But let's stick with Harvard for a moment. As we look at President Claudine Gay's resignation letter, let's kind of back up a little bit just for some context. You may be out of sorts over the holidays, but let's go back to a congressional hearing last month. New York Republican Congresswoman Elise Stefanik asked the presidents of Harvard, University of Pennsylvania, and MIT about pro-Palestinian protests, anti-Jewish speech on college campuses. Here was President Gay's response.
And Dr. Gay, at Harvard, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment, yes or no?
It can be, depending on the context.
What's the context?
Targeted as an individual, targeted at an individual.
So, again, stunning responses in all of that. Representative Stefanik pushed for clarification about what counts as anti-Semitic rhetoric, and here was President Gay's response.
Anti-Semitic rhetoric, when it crosses into conduct that amounts to bullying, harassment, intimidation, that is actionable conduct, and we do take action.
So it was really interesting as you watched that hearing play out, and I have been one who has been very critical of many hearings in Congress, that members of both the Democrat and the Republican side of the aisle have turned those into anything but hearings. It's much more performative politics than anything. But this particular hearing was so stunning that I think it took everyone's breath away, on the right and on the left, and everywhere in between. Because you had these college university presidents from these institutions, historic institutions in our country of higher learning, and they seemed so out of context in terms of where the American people are. They seemed so disconnected from reality. They seemed so stuck in an ivory tower. And they actually seemed a little annoyed that they had to appear before Congress and actually answer questions. That was beneath them. And if you go back to our conversation in the last segment with Michael Schaffer from Politico, he was actually describing that those on the left have been afraid of kind of the up and coming, the kind of the workers, so to speak, coming up, where those on the right have been afraid, the elites have been afraid of the audience. And he actually used Fox News and their coverage of some of the election pieces as part of that. They were afraid to offend the audience. And so in the midst of all of that, you have things that actually matter in terms of conversations, especially when it comes to things like anti-Semitism on college campuses. And so it was interesting to me that these elite university presidents were so disconnected from the rest of us in terms of reality and how we see things, and so willing to split hairs. And it was just too cute by half on all of their answers. A little flippant, a little arrogant, a little talking down their noses too. And if you want to look at the description of why a certain kind of politics has been on the rise, not just here in America, but around the world, it's for that very reason. Grievance politics has worked because so many people feel grievance because they feel like they're being talked down to by elites. And so there's this growing disconnect. And so this stepping down today by the Harvard University president was very interesting. Now, I do think this is always interesting to me. You often learn a lot about people in their low moments. I still believe the best speech that Hillary Clinton ever gave was her concession speech. One of Mitt Romney's best speeches was his concession speech for president when he lost to Barack Obama. I think in her statement, President Gay actually got a few things right in terms of turning the focus away from an individual and back to restoring trust in the institution. And so I think she got that part right. But it's a long conversation that we have to get to, and it's one that we're going to continue to track and follow here on Inside Sources in terms of where the country really is, as opposed to where some of those that are in the elite spheres, whether that's academically, politically, or business-wise, where they are. The differences are pretty stunning and pretty big, and we're going to continue to break all of those down. Well, that wraps up hour number one of Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. Don't go anywhere. We'll step aside for top of the hour news, but when we come back, with all the political work, all the political things going on, it was amazing to me that on the Sunday news show, the main topic was mental health. We'll talk about why and what they said coming up next. Stick around.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour. Delta Airlines says it's cooperating with the police investigation of a man's death at the airport last night. The man had climbed into one of the engines of an Airbus A220 with 95 passengers and 5 crew members aboard. The plane was on a de-icing pad and the engine wasn't running at the time. The man died, though, after security personnel removed him from the engine cowling, and they are not sure why. The plane returned to the terminal after the incident. Over 50 people are recovering from carbon monoxide poisoning after going to church on Sunday in the small town of Monroe in Sevier County. KSL News Radio's Amy Kobabe has details.
54 people in total reported getting sick, according to a spokesperson for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That's so many people, the local sheriff's office had to call in backup just to transport them all to the hospital on Sunday. Church spokesperson also says they are investigating a malfunction with the heating system, and he says they are working to support the medical expenses of those affected.
The first indication something was wrong was when a little girl started having problems breathing, and firefighters tested the building for high levels of carbon monoxide. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. An explosion in South Beirut near a Hezbollah stronghold has killed at least 6 people, including a top leader of Hamas. And while no one in the group has claimed responsibility, some are saying Israel may have been responsible, leading to a fear of a violent response out of Lebanon. ABC's Marcus Moore is in Tel Aviv.
If indeed this was an Israeli strike, it's potentially an escalation, a major escalation in this conflict. The question will be, is what the response will be, either from Hamas or Hezbollah. Hezbollah has said that if Israel were to carry out an attack in Beirut on either members of their party or Hamas, that they would respond.
And your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up on the day 25 points. The NASDAQ has recovered a little territory from earlier, now down 245 points, or about 1.6%. And our KSL weather. Nothing's going to change much until Thursday this week. That's next. KSL News Time 2:02.
News doesn't just mean information or dates.
It's the story of our local history being told in real time.
Be a part of the story. This is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
We hope to be a part of your story. We have you covered on KSL News Radio.
Start the new year on the right note. Join the Utah Symphony January 4th through 6th for a program featuring the work Beethoven himself considered one of his best. Experience world-class musicians performing his exhilarating 7th Symphony, along with works by Mozart and more. Plus, before the performance, everyone, even adults, can try a musical instrument at our instrument petting zoo in the lobby. Tickets start at $21. Get yours at utahsymphony.org. Listen to the greatest classical hits from the 1700s to today. The Utah Symphony's Masterworks concerts offer elegant and entertaining evenings at Marisa Brovnal Hall in the heart of Salt Lake City, featuring timeless masterpieces by Beethoven, Dvorak, and Mozart, and even world premieres from modern composers. Tickets start as low as $21. Get yours at utahsymphony.org.
Have you heard of IRS Tax Code Section 1.408A-4? It sounds complicated, but it's a simple tax law thousands of Utah families are using to lock in lower tax bills when they retire. If you've saved at least $200,000 for retirement, and some of this money is in an IRA or 401k, it could save you tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars in future tax bills. You can find out how much you could save by requesting a free and confidential retirement tax savings analysis. It's from Boss Retirement Solutions, a 5-time winner of Utah's Best of State Award. For your free retirement tax analysis, call 801-896-9622. 801-896-9622. That's 801-896-9622.
Advisory services offered through Boss Retirement Advisors, an SEC registered investment advisory firm. Insurance products and services offered through Boss Retirement Solutions.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair. Save up to 20 cents with DinoPay. Here's Ricky Meeks.
We have an accident northbound I-15 at about 600 North. It had been blocking a left lane of traffic. They're working to get all vehicles over to the left and right shoulders at this time. Ricky Meeks in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, it looks like the situation is going to stay about as it's been, with the pollution lingering over the valleys of the Wasatch Front until Thursday, and then we could get a little bit of snow to help clear things up. More snow expected Saturday and Sunday. And right now at 45 degrees and sunny, I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, as you look at the headlines, of course, there's all kinds of political things going on. We've got aid packages that need to go to Israel. We've got aid for Ukraine and war going on there. We have crisis at our southern border. We have the Iowa caucuses are just 13 days away, and a host of other political things, including former President Trump being pulled off the ballot in Colorado and Maine. And so with all of that political hype and rhetoric going on, the headline coming out of yesterday's Sunday Politico shows was a little different than the headlines you might have expected. Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, it is time to think again and get past the headlines, and there are a lot of political headlines today, to be sure. And it was stunning to me that over the weekend, all of the major political shows on Sunday morning had a very similar topic. And it wasn't presidential politics. It wasn't international war. It was mental health. So why is it that we're having a national conversation about mental health on all of our political shows? And so we're going to dig into that for the next 30 minutes here on Inside Sources. We'll start at the national level, and then we're going to bring it right down to your level, what's going on in your space, in your mind, in your home, in your community. Gainland Condi is going to join us coming up at 2:20. On the national front, Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut, a Democrat, appeared on CNN's State of the Union Sunday, and he had a fascinating comment, compared the loneliness crisis in America to something from our past. Take a listen.
It feels like people are having a hard time finding purpose and meaning than ever before. And part of the reason for that is that a lot more people are lonely and feeling alone. 20 years ago, only 3% of Americans reported having no friends. Today, 12% of Americans say they have not a single friend. We report spending half as much time as we used to on a daily basis with family and friends. We're withdrawing into ourselves, and with that comes a real sickness, emotionally, spiritually, physically, and it's something that I think political leaders need to start talking about because it impacts everybody in this country on the right and the left. It's actually a wonderfully unifying conversation because everyone in this country is feeling alone.
Senator Murphy got it absolutely right. And it is a question that political leaders, elected officials should be talking about in this country. We applauded just before we went to the holiday break that the Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, declared loneliness a public health emergency, and is traveling the country, raising awareness, trying to foster those kinds of conversations. Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania was interviewed on Meet the Press over the weekend. He spoke of his own experiences with depression coming off of the 2022 election cycle.
And then after the election, that's when things actually accelerated and got worse. And at that point, I wasn't able to leave bed. And my kids, I really scared my kids. And they thought, "You won, Dad. Why aren't we enough? Why are you still so sad? Why are you even more sad?" And it was hard to explain why I was. And of course, a 9-year-old child wouldn't understand that. And it was awful. And that's when it was continued to get more and more intense. And I pleaded not to go down to D.C. for kind of the orientation.
That's Senator John Fetterman, and he shared in the context of that interview on Meet the Press with Kristen Welker over the weekend that he was actually afraid that if he shared what he was going through, that he would actually not be able to take his seat in the United States Senate. And so it's a real thing. It's a real conversation that we have to get to. Utah Governor Spencer Cox also appeared on Meet the Press on Sunday, spoke of Utah's push to change social media companies who he believes are damaging the health of our children.
We have seen a 63% increase in persistent loneliness and sadness among young women, especially over the past 10 to 12 years in the state of Utah. We have seen, again, suicide rates going up, depression, anxiety, self-harm rates skyrocketing. And what we know also is it corresponds with social media becoming ubiquitous and cell phones becoming ubiquitous with our teenagers. Those numbers you cited from the Surgeon General are deeply troubling and really sad. We have to take control of this.
So, of course, Governor Cox has been leading out on this issue. State legislatures have passed laws restricting minors' use of social media. Of course, that's getting all kinds of lawsuits and things happening at both the local and the federal level. Senator Murphy, again, talked about the fact that there has to be some accountability for all of this. He spoke on how some of the best leaders in American history, including Martin Luther King Jr., made their focus on the policy issues and the spiritual issues facing the country. And he described loneliness as a spiritual issue facing the country.
You can't just have a conversation simply about how people are feeling. You've got to say, how are you feeling? And then what can government do to make it better? If you talk about loneliness, part of the policy is social media regulation, but it's also free time and leisure time, right? Giving people the space where they can go join a church or a social club. It's about connection.
Yeah, you want a 4-day work week.
I want a 4-day work week. I want more functional third places, right? I want more community pools, and I want more vibrant churches. I want places where people can meet. You have to start the conversation around purpose and meaning and connection. But then I think you need to move pretty quickly to policy, but make sure that that's one conversation.
Purpose, meaning, and connection, and then good public policy that supports that. I think that's a crucial connection. So I think what Senator Murphy's saying from the federal level, what the governor is saying from the local level is, look, we got to create space for that kind of connection. That is the spiritual component to all of this. And there has to be good public policy around it. So if businesses are doing things that are causing our kids to be addicted, if they're using algorithms and things that make them more addicted to those devices, which are going to make them more disconnected, more lonely, more depressed, discouraged, and so on. So all of those things go together. That's the essence of where the conversation needs to go from a policy standpoint. Now, I want to close out this portion of the conversation. I want to go back to Senator Fetterman. And remember, Senator Fetterman took about 6 weeks at Walter Reed working on his mental health. He was seriously depressed and needed to get some serious help and intervention. As I said before, he, of his own admission, was worried that if he did that and was vocal about it, let the country know and his constituents know about it, that he would lose his job, that he had just won, by the way. I love the way he described his kids, saying, "Come on, Dad, you just won the election. You shouldn't be sad. You should be really happy." And so working through all of that really matters. And so I want to go back to Senator Fetterman, who gave a great message of hope in this interview. And, of course, he's made a great recovery. And he also gave some great advice. Again, these were all political shows over the weekend, talking about loneliness and depression. Here's some advice from Senator Fetterman that all of us can use today.
And that's why I want people to know that no matter how bad it might think or look right now, I'm begging you, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. And even if you think that's true, hold on. You got to hold on. And you can't imagine how much better it can get if you make the investment and the commitment to just hold that line and work to get better on that.
So very important conversations, not what you expected when you were tuning in to the Sunday political shows, but it is one that I think absolutely matters, whether you are on the left, the right, or anywhere in between politically. Loneliness, mental health, depression, suicide, all of those are issues that we have to grapple with together in our homes, in our community, and in the country. That it requires us to think differently and think again about what we think we know about mental health, starting with our own. As always, if there's anyone listening, if you are in a crisis or having thoughts of suicide, you can dial 988. And as always, you should download the Safe UT app, a great resource for everyone. When we come back, we're going to stay with the question a little longer because this matters way more than any political contest between Democrats and Republicans or anyone else. We're going to stay with this crucial conversation about mental health, so stay with us. Gainalyn Condi is going to join us to talk about some things we all can begin doing right now that can make a difference. Stick with us. We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson.
Jeff Kaplan here for my good friends at Advanced Window Products. Jake Weber and Nate Orchard are spreading the holiday cheer with their biggest sale of the year. If the wind whistles through your windows, if you want a fresh new look for your number one investment, your home, call Advanced Window Products and take advantage of this incredible end-of-year sale. Replace all of your windows and frames, and you get $2,500 off. But that's not all. You get a free premium glass upgrade. Insulate your home against the cold with double-pane windows and stylish frames, any style, any color, and they're built custom right here at their headquarters in Salt Lake City for 37 years. They build the windows, they install the windows, and they guarantee them for life. Plus, an additional $2,500 off and a free premium glass upgrade. You can save now, pay later, so take advantage. Call now, Advanced Window Products, 801-850-9100, 801-850-9100, or visit advancedwindowsusa.com.
For the ones who get it done, the most important part is the one you need now, and the best partner is the one who can deliver. That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Grainger, Because we have professional-grade supplies for every industry, even hard-to-find products. And we have same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders. But most importantly, we have an unwavering commitment to help keep you up and running. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
With no fees or minimums and no overdraft fees, banking with Capital One is the easiest decision in the history of decisions. Even easier than choosing to keep the Grinch away from the toy drive.
Who's going to deliver the toys to the kids?
What about me, the Grinch?
No. Yep, even easier than that.
You steal the presents one time.
With no fees or minimums and no overdraft fees, is it even a decision? That's banking reimagined. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. Capital One NA, member FDIC. Copyright Dr. Seuss Enterprises. Copyright Turner Entertainment Company.
Hi, this is Doug Wright. I've had people ask me, how does NPS, the nice place to save, have such great low prices? Well, they acquire their inventory from overstock, unclaimed and refused shipments from companies around the country, and it makes them possible for you to get these products that you want at unbelievable prices. And it's a win-win-win for everybody. I want to remind everybody, too, that when you shop at NPS, they're always competitive with their groceries. And then the incredible prices on most of the products throughout the store, it is amazing. They check their competitors' pricing first, then they mark down everything between 30 and 70% off, and then they have weekly offers and weekly sales where you can save additional amounts, 20 to 70% off the already reduced prices. New inventory comes in every day. It's an adventure to shop at NPS, the nice place to save, in Orem, Layton, and 2 stores right here in Salt Lake City.
Getting help with electrical repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson, and as we stay with the conversation a little bit longer, it was so stunning to me that every political show on Sunday spent a significant portion of their time not talking about wars and international crisis or presidential elections. They talked about mental health. They talked about loneliness, depression, suicide. Those are crucial conversations because we have to look at these things not only from a policy standpoint on the national, state, local level, we also have to look at it internally. We listened to Senator John Fetterman, who was afraid. He'd won an election, an amazing election, and was depressed and was frustrated, and his family couldn't understand why he was so sad and so despondent, and fearing that he would lose the job that he had just won. But yet was very brave and coming forward and said, I need some help. And spent 6 weeks at Walter Reed and worked things through and is doing much, much better. And as he said, it's still an up and down journey for him. And so we got to change the dynamics in terms of how we look at that. And then we have to begin with what each of us can do today and what we can do not just for ourselves, but in our families and in our homes, in our neighborhoods and in our communities. And to help us do that, we always turn to our good friend, Gaynalyn Condy. She's an author, speaker, mental health advocate, and just one of the great thinkers out there. Gaynalyn, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, and what a great way to start the new year.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything more important we should be talking about. As I looked at all the topics today, one that was just stunning to me is all the political shows were talking about mental health. I said, that's serious. We need to get onto that. And so let's start with some of the things that you're looking at rolling into the new year that all of us can be thinking about that might help us just be and function from a position of strength rather than from a position of weakness this year.
Well, first, let me just lead out with this. In March, it will be 10 years from the time that we lost my 40-year-old sister to suicide. So it actually gives me great hope to hear that all of these political shows put this topic front and center. It to me signals that there's been improvement, even though over the holidays I had a lot of messages about family members that were struggling and those that had lost someone to suicide. So we're not done with the conversation, but we have been moving the conversation to an important place, which needs to be front and center. And it's not just during certain months when we need to focus on it, it's all the time. And so I really appreciate that you also make a space for that on a regular basis on your show. But first and foremost, I would just say already I can tell on my feed, I can hear when I'm driving around with commercials, everyone is trying to change everything about their lives immediately. Like
Be
it's
perfect by
January
Friday.
and yeah, right. Like reorganize all your closets, lose all the weight, save all the money, change all the things that you really want to change. And I have a concern just from a mental health standpoint. And for me, that's not a super conducive to my mental health framework to go into. And I think, is it great that we all want to improve and expand and become better in certain areas? And great. Then for me, it's not making a resolution per se. I try to choose a word or words that's more expansive. It's less shaming for me because I am going to fall short. And so I choose a word more as a compass in making decisions, and it allows me to be in more of a curious framework or state of mind instead of a constricted pass-fail lens with my own progress.
Yeah, I think that's so vital because it is, you do sit down and you write everything and it's like, I'm going to have all of this done by next Friday.
Right.
Or I'm a total failure. And so I think that's
Right.
important. And I love this idea of having a compass, having a word for the year, having some sort of compass that's going to guide you through it, as opposed to something that will cause you to function from that position of weakness or defense or less than, because I'm not perfect and it's almost Friday. And so let's talk to it. Let's talk about it in terms of how do we ratchet that forward. And one of the things that I love is that you frame things in terms of education, because we all look at that and say, more education, that's a good thing. Apply that to our mental health space.
Well, I just love the idea of the senator being bold in his leadership by saying, I need help. And I would say for business leaders, family leaders, community leaders, when we expand therapy in more of a broad term and really ground it in the idea that it's an educational component, then we all could use therapy. We all deserve more education and growth. And so instead of being embarrassed about more education, I would ask for leaders and fathers and teachers to ask what support looks like for you. And so that's why having a word for the year allows you to have that compass to direct some of those smaller decisions instead of these big sweeping motions that we want to take to change everything in our life. And so when our coworkers and our family and our friends are talking about their therapy or what they're getting as way of support, we're not all elected to public office where we need to make it maybe such a public display. But I love it when people post about therapy tools that they have found or educational experiences that have helped their mental health. It ripples out in really powerful ways, encouraging others to also get support. I just ran into someone last night at an event and had a public experience, and his feedback to me on what I had been posting caused me to think about how often what we say or what we share or what we comment on really does ripple. And we don't always know that. We don't always know that someone took notice and it gave them permission to take a different step in the direction of scheduling their own therapy appointment.
I love that. And I love the idea of, one, asking ourselves, what does support look like? I think that's an important self-realization. But then also being able to have those conversations with a coworker, with a family member, with a friend, or whoever it might be, to say, what does that look like for you? And how can I be helpful in that space as well?
And maybe in the next week or two before you're into some big list of goals, asking yourself what support looks like for this coming year. I did post about my word this year, and someone did post that their word this year is support. And I just thought that was such a beautiful compass to have for the year. Like, sometimes we don't even know what we need. And so spending a few minutes or days in the next couple of weeks asking, what do I really need for this year? Not just in my mental and emotional health, but in all areas of my life. And what does that support look like? And then seeing that as a strength when we ask for that help.
I love that. And then, of course, as we go through the year, as we always say on this show, life is messy. Families are messy. Communities are messy. How should we approach messy in 2024?
Well, we're going to make a million decisions between today and a year from now when we may be having this same conversation. And when I look back on 2023, I can see where some of those decisions I celebrate that I made, and then others look like a 10-car collision on the freeway. And that's part of mortality. That's just as much, I try to say to my kids all the time, what are the mistakes that I've made you who you are today. My daughter is living out of state right now, and she just wrote this exact quote back to all of her friends and family when she sent her email, and it was, when we erase the mistakes, we erase who we are. And so instead of seeing all those decisions that may not be pretty, that may be messy, like you said, how does that change who we are if we eliminated those? But I think more than that, for me in the work that I do in this space with mental health, suicide is one decision that stops other decisions. So when we're addressing addiction or mental health, it allows and influences our ability to make other choices. But the opposite of that can happen as well. With teenagers with no frontal cortex, they're making decisions about their mental health and suicide in a 15-minute window, and that's kind of scary and alarming. And so when we normalize conversations, those that are listening to this, and if you go home tonight and around the dinner table, you talk about what support looks like for this year and what therapy means to you as an educational tool, and maybe what your word for the year is, what kind of conversations are going to happen in really normal everyday places that stop some of those one choices that change other choices, which we want to eliminate, because we're not better without any of our brothers and sisters on the planet. We just aren't.
No question about that. And again, as we always point out, if you are in crisis, if you are in a space where you're thinking of an alternative choice to being here on this planet, in this space, we're not better off without you. Nobody is.
Right.
And we
right. And that 988 hotline is so great because it's 3 numbers, and it's there for that immediate when we're thinking there's no hope, that whatever is right before us is how it's always going to be. I'm here to tell you, at the beginning of a new year, there were many days last year that I thought, I can do this day, but I can't do this day forever. And those hard days didn't stay. You know, some of those problems are chronic and long term, and some of the things that we're dealing with, I want to validate that those that deal with chronic mental health struggles, they're tired. And this time of year, it's really important to acknowledge that you're tired, but we aren't going to be better without you. So asking yourself what support looks like in a different way today. Therapy is really broad now. There's so many different modalities out there that it's not just the traditional sit on the couch kind of talk therapy. So I just really hope your listeners know that we aren't going to be better without you. And this hard day, this exhaustion of your soul, it's not going to be forever.
Fantastic. Great insight as always, Gaynalyn Conde. We appreciate you joining us on the show. And you may not be able to do this day forever, but what a difference a day can make if we just lean on each other, link and lock arms, and move forward on all of this. This is an important part of stewardship for all of us everywhere. Gaynalyn, thanks for helping us get through that.
Happy New Year, Boyd. Thank you.
All right. Great perspective, as always, from Gaynalyn Conde. She's an author, speaker, mental health advocate, and someone we always turn to when we get to these kinds of conversations that are crucial for us in our homes, our community, and in our country. We'll be right back.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top local story this hour. Police have now identified the man who died after climbing into an airplane engine as it sat on a de-icing pad at the Salt Lake City International Airport. 30-year-old Kyler Effinger was a passenger booked on another flight to Denver. Police say he left the concourse through a security door and got into the cowling while the engine components were rotating. FAA air traffic controllers notified the crew to shut down the engines. He was pulled out of the engine. Life-saving efforts were begun, but he died at the scene. There were 95 passengers and 5 crew members aboard Delta Flight 2348 to San Francisco. It returned to the terminal after the incident, and no one else was injured. People buying prescription drugs will see price increases on at least 500 different medications. Major pharmaceutical companies are raising their prices starting this month. Here's KSL News Radio's Heather Kelly.
Last September, President Joe Biden required a reduction on 10 high-cost drugs like insulin. KSL.com reports while Eli Lilly dropped the cost on its insulin product by nearly 76%, they are increasing their popular diabetes drug almost 5%.
Pharmaceutical companies Pfizer, Sanofi, and Takeda say they are raising prices on about a quarter of their drugs. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average finishing trading today 25 points up, but the NASDAQ was way down, 245 points, about 1.6% on the day. And our KSL weather, the stagnant air is going to stick around for a bit. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:31.
You know what's great about KSL's traffic coverage? Trained traffic reporters and real listeners.
Trading information and making the commute safer and faster for everyone.
Every 10 minutes on the 9s, we have you covered on KSL News Radio.
Give the star in your life the brightest gift in the world. Name a star after them. This is Rocky Moselle with International Star Registry. For $59 and a call to 800-282-3333 or visit starregistry.com, you can name a star for birthdays, weddings, or even memorials. Over 45 years, we have named millions of stars for celebrities and individuals from around the world. The star you name will be recorded in book form in the U.S. Copyright Office. Visit starregistry.com or call 800-282-3333.
Angie's List is now Angie, and we've heard a lot of theories about why.
I thought it was an eco move. Fewer words, less paper.
No, it was so you could say it faster.
No, it's to be more iconic.
Must be a tech thing. But those aren't quite right. It's because now you can compare upfront prices, book a service instantly, and even get your project handled from start to finish.
Sounds easy.
It is, and it makes us so much more than just a list. Get started at Angie.com. That's ANGI, or download the app today.
When your back pain is your foot's fault. This is Dean's story.
It was affecting me when I walked, which is a kind of a common activity.
Dean's chronic back pain had become a pain in the you-know-what.
At first, I just sort of ignored it, but eventually everything catches up to you.
Physically and mentally.
Back pain affects your mood. It really does.
But that's not the only connection Dean made.
A friend of mine suggested I go to the Good Feet store. I was a little confused. Why would I need a foot store? My feet are fine.
But he thought, what the heck? He had nothing to lose.
They took impressions of my feet, and with the footprint, they were able to get me a personalized arch support that, lifted pressure off my back.
So the source of your back pain was right under your toes.
It's something maybe I should have known, but I found out in the nicest possible way.
See how arch supports work for you with a free fitting. Find your Good Feet store at goodfeet.com.
Stop by the Good Feet store in Farmington, Riverton, or Sandy for a free fitting. Call 1-800-NEW-FEET or visit mygoodfeet.com.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair. Save up to 20 cents with DinoPay. Here's Ricky Meese.
We do have a crash in Provo Canyon. This is westbound Highway 189 by Bridal Veil Falls. The vehicles are now moved over to the right shoulder. Don't miss the Rocky Mountain Gun Show, January 6th and 7th at the Mountain America Expo Center in Sandy. Get 500 rounds of 9mm ammo for just $95. RockyMountainGunshows.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather. The polluted air will stick around for another couple of days, and then by Thursday we should get a little bit of snow moving in to help improve things. Won't clear out completely, though, till we get more snow on Saturday and Sunday. Right now, 43 degrees and sunny. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson.
On Utah's home for elevated conversation.
Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, we're going to turn now to a publishing story. We don't do that very often, but a very interesting one. Most people don't realize that most books that are published, hardcover books, it is pretty rare for a hardcover book to actually sell more than 5,000 copies, even in today's world. We're going to talk about a book that had an original run of 5,000 copies in 1830. And the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has published and distributed its 200 millionth copy of the Book of Mormon. We're going to look at what the significance of that is from both a publishing milestone, what it means to the church, what it means to people around the world. And to help us break all of that down, really pleased to have joining us in studio today Ryan Jensen, the editor of the Church News. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Boyd, thanks for having me.
So this is amazing to me. And again, regardless of anyone's faith persuasion, a book that was published in 1830, 5,000 copies.
Yeah.
That's bold and audacious, to say the least, especially at a time when most people didn't even read.
And the ones that you're talking about today that get published and have 5,000 sold, that's on a press that can print multiple books every single day. This was 5,000 copies of the Book of Mormon published in a 200-day period, which was unprecedented for that time. The press itself was state of the art. It was miraculous that the press was in a place where the prophet Joseph Smith could make use of it, and where he had individuals who were in place who could also provide some of the initial funding needed to make that printing happen.
Yeah, and so extraordinary. I think a lot of the early publishing of the churches is really an extraordinary thing, not just with the publishing of the Book of Mormon, but also newspapers, periodicals, tracts, at a time when it was all pretty slow printing. This was not to pull up your thing on your computer and knock out a page. This was single letter, reverse type.
Right.
This was heavy lifting.
That iron press was huge. 1,500 pounds is what they say that press weighed. And for that to be able to be built and then shipped partway by wagon, partway by the Erie Canal, this was a large undertaking for that to arrive at the Grandin Press in Palmyra, where, of all places, there was not a lot of printing need in that city at the time. Yeah. And so you had a man who owns a press, who makes himself available to print small run types of items. And here he is meeting with Joseph Smith, who says, I have this book that I would like to be printed. And, they had to go a little bit of the rounds to come to an agreement on actually printing the Book of Mormon there. And Joseph Smith went to New York, and he was looking at other presses as well. But what he lands on is the one that's basically right there in his own backyard.
Oh, that is so fascinating. And so here we are at 200 millionth copy. Give us a little bit of that journey, what that looks like.
Well, those first 5,000 copies, you have early members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints who are sharing the Book of Mormon with their friends, with their neighbors, with people who live by them, as they read it, study it, and feel the Spirit changing their lives and how they perceive the gospel of Jesus Christ. Then missionaries are called. They're going up to Canada. They're going across the ocean back to England and to Denmark, and they're taking the Book of Mormon with them there. And so multiple copies, those thousands of copies are being shared throughout North America and Europe. And then it takes us, as a church, it takes nearly 180 years to have 100 million copies of the Book of Mormon distributed to people around the world. And then it only takes 23 years to double that number from 100 million to 200 million, which we reached in 2023.
Wow. And so that 2023 number includes how many languages? I know there's some that are excerpts and so on. Give us a breakdown of that.
Yeah, so the church breaks it down into full translations and into a small group that they call selections of the Book of Mormon. So this isn't just random people who've translated a few verses here and there. Officially, the church has a publication called Selections of the Book of Mormon. And so there are 92 full translations, 21 selections of the Book of Mormon. Most recently, I think it was Macedonian was the last full version of the Book of Mormon to be published, if I'm correct. And so, and then there are always others that are in process as well. But the Scriptures Committee of the church has a list, and they have lots of factors that go into how all of those decisions are made. But approaching 100 full versions of the Book of Mormon is a big deal. The opportunity that people around the world have to read this story of 1,000-year history and the prophets who prophesied of the coming of Jesus Christ and his second coming as well, that door being open to people who speak more than 100 languages is a big deal. It's what was prophesied of by those same prophets who wrote in the Book of Mormon. They knew this needed to reach people in what Elder Renlund recently called the language of their hearts. So it's not about having a missionary who maybe can speak some of your language coming and telling you kind of what the Book of Mormon says. The prophecies were that this would be available in the places where people lived, in the languages that they speak, in the language that the Spirit could reach them and touch their hearts. And so that is really, for me, a huge takeaway in this, because the percentage of people in the world who speak these languages is pretty high. And yet, in a recent interview with Elder Dale G. Renlund of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, he said, it's not enough yet. We still have more to go in terms of the languages. Elder David A. Bednar spoke about this recently at a Silicon Slopes event. Yeah. And there's a lot of progress being made to take it into even more languages. And we're not talking a few dozen more languages. We're talking about doubling and tripling the number of languages that this could become available in.
Wow.
But if you step back, Boyd, and you look at this and you say, okay, how much does this matter to every individual? Elder Renlund, we just published a podcast in the last hour where he talks with executive editor Sarah Jane Weaver about it's not just having the book in your language. It's not just having the book in your hand. It's reading it, it's studying it, it's having the Spirit touch your heart and help make a positive difference in your life to bring you closer to your Heavenly Father that really makes the difference. Yeah. And so expanding that to all those people who speak those languages, it's making a big difference, a better difference in the world every day.
Yeah, it's such an amazing thing. And from a publishing standpoint, from a spiritual standpoint, from a community standpoint, you look at all the languages and the communities where this book has now gone all around the world. Give us a sense, Ryan, you've done the deep dive on this from a publishing standpoint, and now that we have so much that's available digitally, how does that change the dynamic? How does that change the trajectory in terms of the reach of a book that now has over 200 million copies?
Boyd, I think a lot of your listeners may remember at the time President Ezra Taft Benson in 1988, he gave a seminal address during General Conference where he encouraged members to flood the earth with copies of the Book of Mormon. Yeah. And he talked about the things that he hoped people would do in terms of leaving a Book of Mormon in your workplace, making sure that people knew this is something that you believed in, playing the cassette tapes of the Book of Mormon. I still have actually my grandparents' records of the Book of Mormon too. But you're right. If you look back at what he said in 1988 about using all the means we have available to us, well, would he even have imagined where we would be today? Because we've gone from there to a place where we now have so many different means. We have, just to name a couple of them, we have the Gospel Library app, which members of the church use on a regular basis to do their gospel study. But there is a Book of Mormon app, which is just a standalone app for the Book of Mormon, especially to help those who've never been introduced to it or read any of it to get in and say, what really is this book about? So there's another one. We have the Book of Mormon videos that the church over the last 5 years has been publishing, and there are going to be almost a dozen more of those that are released this year to coincide with the church's Come Follow Me study, which will be the Book of Mormon this year. And then you have also the ability to listen to it via download. You have the ability to use the illustrated Book of Mormon stories, which were redone just for 2024 as well. So there are a lot of different ways people can be exposed to the stories and to the inspiration that comes from the Book of Mormon.
Oh, fantastic. Great insight. Ryan Jensen is the editor of the Church News. And again, the really a publishing milestone. 200 millionth copy of the Book of Mormon has been distributed by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Again, I think it is one of the most miraculous publishing stories in the history of the world. From when it was done, how it was done back in 1830, to today, there aren't very many books anywhere in the history of the world that have had this kind of reach or had this kind of beginning. And Ryan Jensen, we appreciate you helping us dig into that, and I think there's a lot more yet to come on that. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Wade. Good to be here.
All right, we'll step aside for one last break. When we'll come back, we'll take some final thoughts as we begin 2024, looking at how do you take that what if and turn it into a what is this year. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Born Michael King Jr. on January 15th, almost 100 years ago.
Rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice.
Minister, activist, and civil rights leader. His message as important today as it was then.
Now is the time to make justice a reality for all of God's children.
We honor the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.
at KSL News Radio.
Can an insurance bot ever really understand your needs?
Do you think I'd benefit from bundling my auto and home coverage?
Searching for homes with car dealerships nearby.
Sure, robots listen, but do they understand you? At Farm Bureau Financial Services, we'll help you save money and time by bundling your auto and home insurance. Find an agent at fbfs.com/protect. It's your future. Let's protect it. Farm Bureau Property and Casualty Insurance Company, Western Agricultural Insurance Company.
Introducing Yes, heating, air conditioning, plumbing, and electric. We're bringing all of Utah's favorite HVAC, plumbing, and electrical brands under one roof. Maximize your energy savings with a new energy-efficient heating and cooling system from Yes, and you could save up to $4,500 through possible tax credits and other discounts. Purchase a new system today, and Yes will buy back your old inefficient HVAC system. Visit theyesmancan.com to schedule your appointment. Call now or visit theyesmancan.com for details, terms, and conditions.
At Lowe's, save big every day when you buy in bulk. Save 15% on select Sanctuary by Green Fiber blown-in insulation when you buy 30 or more. Plus, get an extra 5% off every day on eligible purchases when you use your Lowe's Business Credit Card. Lowe's knows savings. Lowe's knows pros. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. Discount taken at time of purchase. See sales associate for details. 5% offer subject to credit approval. Exclusions and terms apply. See store or lowes.com/credit for details.
For the ones who get it done, the most important part is the one you need now. And the best partner is the one who can deliver. That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Grainger. Because we have professional-grade supplies for every industry, even hard-to-find products. And we have same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders. But most importantly, we have an unwavering commitment to help keep you up and running. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
If you've ever set New Year's resolutions before, you know how difficult it is to follow through because you have to wait to see the results. What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and in honor of your New Year, New You resolutions, Any Hour Services is having our New Year, New System sale. From now until the end of February, Any Hour Services will give you $2,024 off a new furnace and air conditioner, and you don't have to wait to save the money. You get $2,024 off at the time of purchase. The only thing you have to do to qualify for our New Year, New System sale is call Any Hour Services and schedule a free estimate. When you call, there's no obligation to buy. Just schedule a time to meet that works best for you. Let me say that again. From now until the end of February, when you have Any Hour Services install a new furnace and air conditioner, we'll give you $2,024 off. Call Any Hour Services right now and schedule a free estimate. 801-443-7400. You can Google Any Hour Services. You can even schedule online at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Mom and Dad used to argue about everything, especially about Dad's drinking. It drove me crazy. It got so bad, I couldn't do my homework. I couldn't concentrate. I absolutely refused to let any of my friends come to our house for any reason. I would have been humiliated if anyone found out how much my dad drank and how loud my mom screamed at him. My family went from totally crazy to quiet, calm, and even peaceful. The only thing that happened is my mom started going to Al-Anon family groups. Her relationship with my dad really changed. I asked Mom if she would take me to her Al-Anon meetings or to Alateen. I wanted to see if I could have a better relationship with my dad. I'm sure glad I did. If someone's drinking troubling you, you might be surprised at what you can learn in an Al-Anon or Alateen family group from people just like you. Call 1-888-4-ALANON or go to alanon.org.
At Social Security, we are always thinking of ways to save you time and make things easier. That's why we created My Social Security. Opening a My Social Security account gives you secure access to your personal record and interactive tools tailored for you. You can see if you are eligible to receive benefits, view spousal benefit estimates, and compare retirement benefit estimates at different ages or dates when you want to start receiving benefits. Already receiving benefits? Use your account to change your address, set up or change direct deposit, get a proof of income letter, and more. In most states, you can also request a replacement Social Security card. Save time. Go online. Open a My Social Security account at ssa.gov/myaccount. Social Security, securing today and tomorrow.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
2 years ago, Americans watched in horror as a crisis unfolded at the Kabul airport.
She was tear-gassed and beaten.
Images of thousands desperate to escape Taliban oppression filled our news feeds. More than 80,000 Afghans made it to America. But the story didn't end there.
It was very cold. There was no power, no heat.
Who would help our newest neighbors? I'm Andrea Smartin. In Stranger Becomes Neighbor, you'll hear the stories of some remarkable refugees who left their homes and their dreams behind, only to start over from zero.
Their only possession was 3 blankets.
And you'll meet Americans who stepped up to help them.
You want me to come when you deliver your baby.
What can one person do in the face of an international disaster decades in the making? That's Stranger Becomes Neighbor. Find us at kslpodcast.com. Follow us on Apple Podcasts or anywhere else you listen.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, police have identified a man who died after climbing into an airplane engine at the Salt Lake City International Airport. It was 30-year-old Kyler Effinger of Park City. Second, major drug companies are raising prices on hundreds of drugs with the first of the year. Insulin is the main exception. Third, 54 people were exposed to carbon monoxide at a meeting house of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Monroe. Right now, 43 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today, as always. I am Boyd Matheson. As we round out the program today, of course, the curtain came down on a pretty tumultuous 2023 Sunday evening into Monday morning. And I know there were a few people on social media and other places that kind of bid the year a very emphatic good riddance. Let's get on to next. And it's interesting, though, that the challenges and the disruption that we had during the course of 2023 really makes us start thinking about, okay, now what? What comes next? And I think it's important for us to remember, even looking back, 2023 didn't win. It may have tested us on a whole host of issues, from personal to business to politics and international events for sure. But the thing that's interesting to me, the thing that caused so many of us to question leaders and for many to lose confidence in their neighbors and even themselves, there was a lot of the worst of humanity, flaws, all kinds of weaknesses in systems, a lot of sinkholes in civil society that we found. But the year also reminded us that there's a lot of bright beacons of compassion, of service, of innovation. We look at some of the things that happened in the wake of fires in Maui and other places around the world. That commitment to the common good and people helping neighbors in need is a reason for great hope moving forward. So it's always interesting to me. The turning of the year is always filled with an abundance of hope, some inspiring dreams, some renewed optimism for good things to come. There's something magical about that fresh start that I don't know why, just turning the page in the calendar promotes, big goals, New Year's resolutions, inner desire to do better, be better, become better. But to me, the essence of New Year's is all contained in a really simple question. It's only 2 words. What if? As in, what if? What if this is the year for all those hopes and dreams to become a reality? And it's interesting to me as you look back over it, if the what if were a currency with real transformational potential and possibility, I'd spend it on some things a little differently in 2024 than maybe I did in 2023. So you could look at it from the context of, what if this year I actually kept my New Year's resolutions beyond January 21st, which is when most people have already given up on them. Another what if. What if I spent less time deciding and more time doing at home, at work, in my relationships? What if I acted on inspiration and impulses to reach out to those around me, especially those that might be struggling with mental health issues? What if I spoke less and listened more? What if I was less certain in my opinions and more open to the ideas of others? What if I stopped comparing my status and the status of my life to those on social media that look so perfect? What if I read more and watched less? What if I was less consumed with self and more driven by making a difference for people around me? Or what if I just stopped reading and regurgitating someone else's talking points in political discussions? What if I focused on being a role model instead of a critic? What if I gave my spouse or my children, my family, my friends, my colleagues, my community members the benefit of the doubt when there is doubt? What if I spent time on priorities that I at least say publicly are the most important? Or what if I was just simply more grateful? Or what if I kept my commitments a little better? What if I decided to slow down more often and determined to purposefully disconnect from technology an hour a day, 1 day a week, 1 week a year? What would that do? And then, of course, we can go to all the other spaces that we tend to talk about. What if Congress did its job and actually passed a budget so there'd be no threat of a government shutdown? We've got 17 days to find that out. But what if? What if they did their job? What if we didn't have any fiscal cliffs or shutdown showdowns or manufactured crises? What if we rejected the politics of personal destruction and focused on principles and sound public policy instead? What if members of Congress were less worried about their reelection and more concerned with doing what's right for the American people? What if the American people realized that community and culture lead and the politicians will actually follow us? What if citizens realize there's much more that unites us in this country than actually divides us? What if we recognize that the solution to any problem begins when someone says, let's talk about it? What if we all understood that solutions to problems don't emanate from Washington and marbled halls, but are found in our homes, in our neighborhoods, in our communities? What if we engaged in elevated dialogue instead of just the partisan rhetoric? What if citizens rejected the false choices regularly served up to us by politicians? What if we expected more rather than accepting less from our leaders?